Week 1, Lecture 1, What is a Text? So you've signed up for this course, Lit 2000, Intro to Literature. And you're probably thinking to yourself, I know what literature is, I know what intros are, I'm good to go. But what that course title really means is that this is an introduction to literary studies at the college level. But what is literary studies? I mean, in physics, you do physics. In chemistry, you do chemistry. In accounting, you do accounting. What do you do in literary studies? Well, we can define literary studies as the analysis and appreciation of literature. So we work to both understand what literature means, but also why literature is valuable as a kind of index of human experience and expression. But we're leaving out one important thing in that sentence. Analysis, appreciation, those are fairly self-evident. We've got an idea about what those mean. But what is literature? I'm going to show you 3 different things, and we're going to think about, are these things literature, right? And what is it that we mean when we say that something is literature, or we say that it is literary? Here we have Moby Dick, Herman Melville's classic 19th century novel, the great American novel. Is it literature? We'll see in a minute. Here we've got a poem I found on Google Images. It says, I want to get close to you like shoes with laces, teeth with braces, or sins without spaces. It's like a poem that one of your classmates might have written, one of your peers. Is that literature? Finally, over here we have a stop sign. It's a word on an octagon, or is that a hexagon? I think it's an octagon. Is that literature? I don't know. Well, Moby Dick, right, is a famous, critically acclaimed novel. It's complex. It's got many different parts. People have been talking about it and thinking about it for over a century. Is it a piece of literature? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say that that is probably literature. Now we got this poem by one of your peers. Is that literature? I mean, maybe. It's written to express an idea. It's got a feeling behind it. It uses some literary technique. It's got rhyme. It even manipulates the language on the page. Literature? It could be. The stop sign? Oh, I don't know. It's got one word on it. It's meant to convey information. It's not really meant to be interpreted or appreciated. You're meant to look at it and understand that you're supposed to stop your car. Is it literature? Probably not. So what do we mean when we're talking about literature? Well, one way to think about it is that literature is writing that has been elevated to the status of art. So when we look at Moby Dick, or even the poem by your peer, we can see that an attempt was made here to create a sort of unique expression of an idea in language. And so in that sense, both of those things are literature. They are writing that is attempting to attain the status of art. But we also have to recognize that when we talk about literature, or we call something literature, or we say it's literary, we're making a kind of value judgment. It's even in there in that elevation, right? So we might also think about literature as the way that we read something for the artfulness of how it uses language. In other words, we project the category of literature onto certain kinds of objects in order to indicate that we value them in a certain way. Now, in this class, y'all are going to be literary critics. And as literary critics, we read literature and we write about our reading to change how we read. So we read a poem, we read a story, we read a play, we write about our experience reading that, how we made meaning with that text, and then we use that argument, that persuasion that we put forward in making a claim as to what interpretation we believe to be true, and we use that to change, or hopefully change, how other people read that same text, or maybe a different text. However, what are we reading? And I've already slipped up and used the word a couple times. We're reading texts. Not that kind of text, though. Text is a technical term in literary studies, and it means any intentional arrangement of objects, language, or media from which an observer can recover a representation or signification. Now, I recognize a couple of those words we're going to need to define a little more closely. And in our course, we're going to have our own definitions for some terms. So be sure that you're taking notes and you're writing these kinds of things down. Here, by representation, we mean a communicative act meant to represent some aspect of reality. So a communicative act meant to represent some aspect of reality. But when we're talking about signification, what we mean is how an object or objects convey meaning. So with signification, we mean how an object or objects convey meaning. So what we're thinking about is the way that people arrange objects, language, and media for readers to read. We might think about our example earlier, right? Moby Dick. Is it a text? Well, it does appear to have an intentional arrangement. It's got language all over the place, and we can recover all sorts of ideas and expressions from it. Definitely a text. What about the poem? Well, it is also intentionally arranged. You see, they broke it into lines. They chose where to put the spaces in that last word. And we can recover from it a sort of representation of a certain kind of feeling, right? And we can also see in it a signification, the way that it's working there to get its message across. Definitely a text. The stop sign, it's intentional. It arranges the language in the shape. It's even got that red color on there to warn us that we need to stop. Is it a text? Definitely a text. But it's not literature. What we need to do for next time is you need to make sure you take the What is a Text quiz. You can have your notes open, that's fine, right? But take the quiz. Also continue doing the readings for week 1. All right.